The following is a verbatim reading of a publicly released government document. No commentary, interpretation, or analysis has been added. The text is read as written. The narco-terrorist organizations working in partnership with the defendants 11. The FARC, since its founding in 1964, has become one of the largest producers of cocaine in the world. The FARC has generated significant revenue through its cocaine trafficking, which it used to fund its operations, including, for example, large-scale weapons purchases and terrorist attacks. The FARC has also directed violent acts against United States persons and property in foreign jurisdictions, including, but not limited to, Colombia. For example, from at least in or about 2003 to in or about 2008, FARC leadership ordered FARC members to kidnap and murder United States citizens and to attack United States interests in order to dissuade the United States from continuing its efforts to fumigate and disrupt the FARC's manufacturing and distribution of cocaine and cocaine paste. Consistent with these activities, in or about 1997, the U.S. Department of State, State Department, designated the FARC as a foreign terrorist organization, FTO, pursuant to Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, INA. On November 30, 2021, the State Department removed the FARC from the FTO list and simultaneously designated two FARC successor organizations as FTOs, pursuant to Section 219 of the INA. The FARC-EP and Segunda Marquetalia, both of which remain so designated as of the filing of this superseding indictment. 12. The ELN has operated as a Colombian terrorist group since 1965, dedicated to the violent overthrow of the democratically elected government of Colombia. In furtherance of its anti-government agenda, the ELN has committed kidnappings, bombings, and other violent attacks targeting civilians and Colombian law enforcement. In addition, the ELN exports tons of cocaine annually to the United States and elsewhere in order to finance its terrorist activities, and has, at various times, partnered with other Colombian guerrilla groups in pursuit of its cocaine trafficking and violent agenda. Consistent with these activities, in or about 1997, the State Department designated the ELN as an FTO pursuant to Section 219 of the INA-ELN, remains so designated as of the filing of this superseding indictment. 13. The Sinaloa Cartel, based in the Mexican state of Sinaloa, has its roots in the late 1980s, when the so-called Mexican Federation functioned as a council with representatives from the respective drug trafficking organizations of its principal leaders. During the late 1980s and 1990s, the members of the Mexican Federation partnered with Colombian sources of supply to transport drugs through Mexico and into the United States. In the early 2000s, Joaquín Archibaldo Guzmán Loera, aka El Chapo, and Ismael Zambada Garcia, aka El Mayo, formed a partnership that led to transformation of the Mexican Federation into the Sinaloa Cartel, which became the largest drug trafficking organization in the world. At present, the Sinaloa Cartel is highly organized and active in more than half of all states in Mexico. Through a sophisticated and heavily armed security apparatus, the Sinaloa Cartel wields power through fear, threats, and violence, including by killing police, civilians, and members of other criminal groups who encroach on their territory without authorization. Members of the Sinaloa Cartel may also be killed for perceived disloyalty, disobedience, or to send a message. To further and protect its drug interests, the Sinaloa Cartel engages in other criminal conduct, including bribery, extortion, and weapons trafficking. As an additional means of revenue and profit, the Sinaloa Cartel engages in migrant smuggling and human trafficking. Consistent with these activities, in or about February 2025, the State Department designated the Sinaloa Cartel as an FTO pursuant to Section 219 of the INA. The Sinaloa Cartel remains so designated as of the filing of this superseding indictment. 14. The Zetas, later known as the Cartel del Noreste, S.D.N.Y, is a violent and prolific transnational drug organization based in northeastern Mexico involved in drug trafficking, kidnapping, extortion, human smuggling, and other illicit activities. The Zetas use violence to exert criminal control, including attacks against government officials in Mexico. Between in or about 2000 and in or about 2010, the Zetas formed an alliance with the Gulf Cartel, a group of drug traffickers primarily based in northern Mexico, whereby the Zetas served as the armed militaristic wing of the Gulf Cartel to maintain control of drug trafficking routes throughout Mexico. The Zetas recruited members of the Mexican Special Forces along with drug traffickers who never served in the military or with a police force to join the organization. In or about the summer of 2010, the Zetas and Gulf Cartel's alliance fractured after a period of intense violence between the organizations. At that time, the Zetas operated as an independent drug trafficking organization that imported ton quantities of cocaine to the United States. Consistent with these activities, in or about February 2025, the State Department designated S.D.N.Y, formerly known as the Zetas, as an FTO pursuant to Section 219 of the INA-C.D.N., referred to as the Zetas in this superseding indictment, remains so designated as of the filing of this superseding indictment. 15. TDA is a violent transnational criminal organization that originated as a prison gang in Venezuela. TDA has expanded its criminal network throughout the Western Hemisphere and established a presence in the United States, including New York. TDA's criminal activities include human smuggling and other illicit acts. TDA has developed additional revenue sources through a range of other criminal activities, including drug trafficking, firearms trafficking, commercial sex trafficking, kidnapping, robbery, theft, fraud, and extortion. TDA members also commit murder, assault, and other acts of violence to enforce and further the organization's criminal activities. TDA has formed ties with other criminal groups operating in the Western Hemisphere and, at times, is willing to collaborate with other criminal groups and organizations on a local and ad hoc basis. Consistent with these activities, in or about February 2025, the State Department designated TDA as an FTO pursuant to Section 219 of the INA. TDA remains so designated as of the filing of this superseding indictment. The defendants' corrupt drug trafficking and connections to narco-terrorist groups. 16. Nicolás Maduro Moros, the defendant like former President Chavez before him, participates in, perpetuates, and protects a culture of corruption in which powerful Venezuelan elites enrich themselves through drug trafficking and the protection of their partner drug traffickers. The profits of that illegal activity flow to corrupt rank-and-file civilian, military, and intelligence officials who operate in a patronage system run by those at the top, referred to as the Cartel de los Soles or Cartel of the Suns, a reference to the sun insignia affixed to the uniforms of high-ranking Venezuelan military officials. 17. Venezuela sits in a geographically valuable location for drug traffickers, with northern access to the Caribbean Sea via several large ports and western access to the mountainous regions of Colombia, where coca is grown and turned into the vast majority of the world's cocaine supply in jungle laboratories. Starting in or about 1999, Venezuela became a safe haven for drug traffickers willing to pay for protection and support corrupt Venezuelan civilian and military officials who operated outside the reach of Colombian law enforcement and armed forces bolstered by United States anti-narcotics assistance. 18. In that environment, cocaine trafficking flourished. Venezuelan officials and their family members, including Nicolás Maduro Moros, Diosdado Cabello Rondon, Ramón Rodríguez Chacón, Celia Adela Flores de Maduro, and Nicolás Ernesto Maduro Guerra, a.k.a.I. Nicolasito, a.k.a. the Prince. The defendants partnered with narcotics traffickers and narco-terrorist groups who dispatched processed cocaine from Venezuela to the United States via transshipment points in the Caribbean and Central America, such as Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico. In or about 2020, the State Department estimated that between 200 and 250 tons of cocaine were trafficked through Venezuela annually. The maritime shipments were shipped north from Venezuela's coastline using go-fast vessels, fishing boats, and container ships. Air shipments were often dispatched from clandestine airstrips, typically made of dirt or grass, and also from commercial airports under the control of corrupt government and military officials. 19. Through this drug trafficking, Nicolás Maduro Moros, the defendant, and corrupt members of his regime enabled corruption fueled by drug trafficking throughout the region. The transshipment points in Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico similarly relied on a culture of corruption in which cocaine traffickers operating in those countries paid a portion of their own profits to politicians who protected and aided them. In turn, these politicians used the cocaine-fueled payments to maintain and augment their political power. So, too, were politicians along the Caribbean route, corrupted by cocaine traffickers who would pay them for protection from arrest and to allow favored traffickers to operate with impunity as they trafficked cocaine from Venezuela north towards the United States. Thus, at every step, relying on the producers in Colombia, transporters and distributors in Venezuela, and recipients and redistributors on transshipment points north, the traffickers enriched themselves and their corrupt benefactors who protected and aided them. 20. Similarly, Nicolás Maduro Moros, Diosdado Cabello Rondon, Ramon Rodriguez Chacin, the defendants, and other corrupt members of the regime facilitated the empowerment and growth of violent narco-terrorist groups, fueling their organizations with cocaine profits. These narco-terrorist organizations not only worked directly with and sent profits to high-ranking Venezuelan officials, but also reaped the benefits of the increased value of that cocaine at each transshipment point along the way to the United States, where demand and thus the price of cocaine is highest. Those organizations include the FARC and ELN, which control cocaine production in the mountainous regions of Colombia, the Sinaloa Cartel and Zetas, which control routes in Central America and the methods for crossing cocaine from Mexico into the United States, and TDA, which controls a criminal network able to assist with the transportation of cocaine within Venezuela and on the Venezuelan coast.